Let's turn to our main speaker tonight, and that is Simon Rosenberg of the Hopium Chronicles. This is a man who correctly predicted that 2022, the red wave would not happen, and instead what we're seeing now in 2023 is a blue wave forming. He's the author of the Hopium Chronicles, which is a Democratic newsletter with 9,000 subscribers. He has raised $200,000 for Arizona's U.S. Senate candidate, Ruben Gallego, and also raised funds for Kirsten Engel, our congressional candidate in Congressional District 6 here in Tucson. You can catch Simon's act on MSNBC, C-SPAN, and CNN. And with that, Simon, the floor is yours.
Larry, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And I'm really here tonight just to say thank you all. I mean, it's my main job. I'm going to talk a little bit about politics, but I'm here to say thank you for the good work you do, Larry, and this remarkable team you've put together. You know, we have a big election here, as all of you know, in Arizona. You have big elections every 2 years. And, this year, I think it's particularly important. If you look at the Electoral College map, we are likely, if you've looked at polling in the last few weeks, right, Biden has gained 2 to 3 points over the last few weeks, last few months. In the 538 averages now, Biden is actually ahead of Trump. We're ahead in Michigan and Wisconsin in the polling averages. And what it means is that, to me, where the election is right now is the likely scenario is that we're going to win Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, as we did in 2020. And we had very good elections in all three of those states in 2022. That gets us to 269 electoral college votes. And so the question is, how do we get to 270? And in my view, there are three places that I believe can be the tipping point. One is North Carolina, where there is a person even more extreme and crazy than Kari Lake running at the top of the ticket of the Republican Party there, a guy named Mark Robinson, and their entire ticket is, imagine if you had 4 or 5 Kari Lakes running up and down the ticket in North Carolina. We have this one electoral college vote in Nebraska, the so-called blue dot, where we're ahead in polling there. We won last time, we should win again. And then there's Arizona. And I think not only do you have this important responsibility of trying to make sure that Ruben Gallego wins and we pick up the seats in Arizona 6 and in Arizona 1, which are important, and maybe more, but certainly those two. You could be the state that delivers the presidency to Joe Biden, right? I mean, let's just be very clear about that. This is the opportunity that you have in this election. It's why your work is so important. It's why I flew out to Phoenix a few months ago and keynoted the Maricopa County 100th anniversary Democratic Party event. It's why, my community's now raised about $220,000 for Ruben. We've raised another $30,000 for Kirsten Engel. We've already raised 30, and we've endorsed Andre Cherney in the first race, who's an old and dear friend of mine. So my community's raised almost $300,000 for Arizona, your 3 candidates that we're backing. And so, this really matters. You're at ground zero. You all know that, right? But you really are at ground zero. And so the reason I'm really here, and when Larry asked, is I'm not doing as many of these presentations as I used to, just because of life and busyness and MSNBC and all the other things I'm doing now, is that anyone who from Arizona and North Carolina who wants me to come talk to them, I'm going to be there, because you guys really are the people that may be central to not only defeating the extremism that you've experienced in your home state, but you can be the one that delivers and make sure that we put MAGA into the dustbin of history and defeat Trump in this election. And so I'm here to say thank you, and to say I'm grateful for all that you've done and all that you will do. I mean, certainly Arizona has been one of the great success stories of the Democratic Party in recent years. You guys have done remarkable things, and I'm really so proud of all of you. And I do want to, Larry, I'm giving a slightly different talk here than I gave earlier, because I want to talk about Arizona, because this is a state that I know pretty well. My wife was born in New Mexico. My mother-in-law was her first major job out of college. She was the assistant to Janet Napolitano's father, and worked for Janet Napolitano's father in New Mexico. Janet used to stay at my in-laws' house in Santa Fe when she would come to New Mexico. And I've done work in Arizona. I spent almost $500,000 in Spanish language advertising in Arizona in 2004. And I was involved in the strategy that helped develop the modern strategy of the Democratic Party towards Hispanic, Latino voters and towards the Southwest. And I just want to reflect for a second the progress that we have made in the Southwest, because in 2004, when Bush won the election, the last time a Republican won both the popular vote and the Electoral College vote, right? And the only time they've won the popular vote and the Electoral College vote, going all the way back to 1988. Bush won in 2004. There are only 6 states that have flipped from Republican to Democrat since 2004. It's Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, and Virginia and Georgia. And so in 2004, Republicans won all 4 of the southwestern states. They controlled 5 out of the 8 Senate seats. They controlled 14 out of the 21 House seats. Today, because of our investment in the Hispanic vote and the Democratic Party waking up to the opportunities in the Southwest more broadly, we now have, in 2020, Biden won those 4 states, the 4 southwestern states. It was the first Democrat to win them since FDR in 1940. The Republicans had 5 out of the 8 Senate seats. Now they have 0. And we control 14 out of the 23 House seats. The success that we've had in the Southwest has been the most significant demographic and geographic success story of the Democratic Party in the last 25 years. And all of you have been at the core of this. I mean, I wrote articles in 2016 and 2017 and 2018 saying Arizona was next, right? It was coming demographically. And, we knew we could win there. I mean, I even tried to get the Obama campaign in 2008 to spend a lot of money there. And so I was a very early investor in the transformation that's taken place in Arizona. And I will tell you that it's come faster and more completely and more successfully than I ever could have imagined in recent years. You guys have kicked ass in Arizona, big time. There's only been really one other state in the country that has had in recent years the kind of transformation, and that's Georgia. But I think you're going to do better in Georgia this time. You're going to flip you're going to take control of the state legislative chambers. You're going to win for Joe Biden. You're going to win for Rubin. And as you know, I've known Rubin for a long time. I talk to Rubin all the time, by the way. Rubin and I are friends. And Rubin, as you know, is not a typical politician, right? He is going to be this, he's a catalyst, right? Like, he makes stuff happen. He's not a traditional politician. He's going to bring this energy, this intensity, and this passion to the state, that is going to be, I think, really important for Arizona's transformation from the state that it used to be to the state that it's becoming. And so I'm so proud of all of you, honestly, for what you've been able to do. You have been part of, one of the great success stories of the modern Democratic Party in a way that I don't know that people really understand. Some of this is because, they have gone from being a party of McCain to this other Kerry Lake party, and they've made it easy for us. But that's not the only reason. It's that you guys have done the work. You've hustled and busted your ass, and in very challenging and difficult circumstances in a state that, Barry Goldwater, and the whole history, right? It's incredible what you've been able to achieve. So, first of all, thank you for what you've done and what you're going to do. And I'm going to be with you here at every step of the way, and anything I can do to be supportive and helpful. We're already raising, Arizona has been, of all the states that my community is focusing on, Arizona has been the highest priority of the whole country, and will continue to be all the way through election day. Second is, we're going to win this election. We have a better candidate. We have better arguments. We have a better campaign apparatus underneath us. My line about the election is that Joe Biden's a good president. The country's better off. The Democratic Party is strong. We're winning elections all across the country. We're building the most powerful political machine that any of us have ever seen. And what do they have? They have Trump, the ugliest political thing we've all ever seen, who's now a rapist, a fraudster, a traitor, and a felon, and who's running a political party that looks more like a raging dumpster fire than a well-oiled political machine. And I think that we have to, recognize that the opportunity that you have, Kerry Lake and the outrageous 1864 Supreme Court decision, to really, do extraordinary things this year, if we do the work, it's there for you. The same is true around the country, right? We've been winning, the story that Larry heard me tell earlier, and I'll just speak for a few more minutes, Larry, and then take a few questions, is that, we've won more votes than the Republicans 7 out of the 8 last presidential elections. That's the best popular vote run of a political party in American history. In the last 4 presidential elections, we've won 51% of the vote. They've won 46.5% of the vote. That 51% over 4 elections is the best we've done as a party since FDR's 4 elections in the 1930s and 1940s. And then, but what we've done in recent years is even more remarkable in some ways. The party in power always loses seats. We lose midterm elections. We lose special elections. We lose ground. And since Dobbs 2 years ago, which I think was really this transformative event, which threw the extremism and the radicalism and the danger of Republicans in everybody's face in a way they couldn't avoid, is that we've been gaining ground. We gained a Senate seat in 2022. We gained state legislative chambers. We gained governorships in 2022, and then in 2020, and we outperformed 2020 in Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Nevada. Minnesota, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania. We got to 59% in Colorado, 57% in Pennsylvania, 55% in Michigan, 54% in New Hampshire. Remember, I should just put an exclamation point on this. In 2004, Colorado was so Republican that the Kerry campaign didn't even compete in Colorado. It's not a battleground state. And today, it's not a battleground state for us. Right? Jared Polis got 59% of the vote in Colorado. New Mexico, we lost New Mexico in 2004. New Mexico is now not a battleground state for us, right? So we've seen this movement of the Southwest, the bluing of the Southwest, as I call it, very evident in 2022. But then in 2023, we also won all across the country in governorships and special elections and, ballot initiatives. We took away the 6-week abortion ban in Ohio. We flipped this critical Wisconsin Supreme Court seat. We flipped the state assembly in Virginia. I just spoke at an event that Tim Kaine did last weekend, and I didn't realize this, but the Virginia Assembly is 400 years old. It's the oldest legislative body in the United States. And because of our work, we have the first African-American speaker of the Virginia Assembly in history a guy named Don Scott, who's a phenomenal guy. So we did extraordinary things in 2023. And then in 2024, we were told this New York 3 special election in Tom Suozzi was going to be the bellwether that was going to tell us everything we needed to know about the election. And the polling had us up 1, 2, 3 points. We won by 8 points there. A district we had lost by 7.5 points in 2022. We made 2 million phone calls in the New York 3. We wrote, every Democratic household got 5 handwritten postcards. The muscles of the modern Democratic grassroots really exerted themselves in New York 3, as we're going to do in November. And we had an extraordinary performance. And so we keep winning, we keep overperforming, they keep struggling, they keep losing. This basic dynamic that's happened since Dobbs, where we keep overperforming, they keep struggling, was even evident last week in Ohio. This special election in Ohio House seat, a seat that Trump won by 30 points. Our candidate only lost by 10 points. We overperformed the district by 20 points with a guy that didn't spend any money. And it's because MAGA is this historically ugly thing. Even many Republicans don't want to go there. And so I think that as you go forward, as you understand, as many in ways that many other people don't, the manifestation of the Republican Party today in your state is a danger. It is a threat to the rights and freedoms of people that we hold dear. It is running against the tradition, the libertarian tradition of the state and the democratic tradition of the state. And if you do the work, I think you're going to have, you guys could come out on election day as the biggest winners of any state in the country for the Democrats if you continue to do your hard work and bust your ass and do all the things that we need to do, the postcarding, the phone calling, the texting, the canvassing, and all, even in 113-degree weather, right? That you have to do. And so let me know what I can do to help you. But just I want to conclude my remarks, Larry, by saying thank you all. I mean, we should go kick their ass this November. I think we're on track to do so. I would so much rather be us than them in every way imaginable. And I certainly am just really proud of everything you guys have been able to do in recent years. Thank you all. Larry, I have time for maybe 10 minutes of questions.
Right. Well, let me get the ball rolling. First of all, I want to say thank you to you for sharing your time with us tonight. I know you're an extremely busy guy. You're under a lot of pressure, and we're very grateful. But I'm telling you, we need inspiration from you. So thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you'd share your thoughts about the Congressional District 6 race that we have here. We have a brilliant law professor, Kirsten Engel, running, and she's a professor who does her homework, but she's running against this MAGA enabler, this anti-abortion right, Juan Ciscomani. This is the guy who voted against the bipartisan border bill. What are your observations about that race?
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed her for my site. You can come see an interview I did with her. I just interviewed Andre Cherney today, and he'll be up on the site on Thursday. And so, I've only done 4 interviews so far, and 2 of them are Arizona candidates, making clear my priority and my investment there. Look, I mean, I think that you've said it all. I mean, she's a very thoughtful, serious, virtuous leader, and I was really impressed with her thoughtfulness and her hard work ethic and her willingness to go do what it takes. And he's obviously one of those Republicans that should not be in office anymore, right? I mean, is not really in the spirit of the people of Arizona and is far too extreme, for the district. And I'm not an expert in Arizona politics. I mean, but what I know is that, and I should say, by the way, that Larry, I think you and I talked about this, but my family used to come every spring training, right? We came
That's
to
right.
Phoenix and Tucson. I'm a baseball guy, and it's like fantasy world for baseball nerds, right? But back when Tucson still had, spring training games, and
Well, I remember well.
yeah, and I would take my kids. One of the highlights of our trips was that we'd always go to the Desert Museum in Tucson, and my kids have extraordinary memories of that place. I mean, what an amazing place that is, and and I knew Congresswoman Giffords. We actually, during one of those trips, I went and visited her in her campaign office, and she was a very dear friend of mine, and my kids all met her when she was running in her first congressional election, and so, Arizona still is a powerful part of my family's story. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking, by the way. I have this old 11-and-a-half-year-old bulldog, Tug, who's somehow got loose from his little area. Sorry about that. He could bark for 2 or 3 hours without stopping. He's a bulldog. He's stubborn and a pain in the ass.
We love bulldogs.
But lovely. And so anyway, so I think that it's, this district, I've been learning a lot about the House races around the country. They're all really close. And, I think the difference is going to be execution, how much work everybody does. We should win there, right? We should win in Arizona 1, 2. We should, in the Schweikert seat, and we should win the House. But I think the difference in this election between us having the election we all want to have and us being really unhappy on election day is how much work we're all going to do. And I think it is, I have a slogan at Hopium, as you know, Larry, do more, worry less, right? We have to all spend less of our time worrying when we're together and just doing the work. You guys know how to do that. And I think that, as I said in my presentation earlier tonight, I think you have to figure out how now. Now it's game time now, right? The debate's in 2 nights and it's all really coming fast, is that you've got to figure out your highest and best use. Where can you add the most value? And, whether it's postcarding or canvassing or phone calling or being an information warrior and spreading good information about Kirsten, right? Whatever it's going to be, you've got to figure out your highest and best use and spend as much time there as you can in these closing weeks and these closing months, because I do think the difference between us having the election we all want and being disappointed is really up to us and how much work we all do together.
Another question is about the polls. The polls go back and forth in terms of who's in the lead, and they're all in the lead. Person is in the lead by 1 point or another, which is in the margin of error.
Yeah.
And I understand your thesis is that, don't pay attention to the polls. What really counts is what happens in elections that are taking place now.
Yeah, it's twofold. I mean, more data is better than less data, right? The key is that I was telling people to calm down because it was so early. Lots of people hadn't checked in. And, that a lot of the underlying structures of this election were positive. And yes, the idea that when people have actually gone and voted, we keep winning and they keep struggling should be as important as a poll of 700 people done by a crappy Republican pollster. Yeah. And I think that part of what we did in 2022, Tom Bonnier and I, when we said there was not going to be a red wave and it was going to be a close competitive election, is that we looked at more than polling, right? We looked at election performance. We looked at voter registration. We looked at fundraising. We looked at the early vote. And so, we were able to look at something broader than just polling, which has been, it's harder to do high quality polls. Polling got very expensive because of response rates going down. There's also a lot of junky Republican polling in the system. And so if you center your understanding of politics around polling, you are going to be disappointed. There's a lot of other information available to us to be able to make a more complete picture of what's happening. And I think that, as all of you know, when you buy a house, you don't buy it just on price, right? It's like, is the kitchen cool? And do you have a good backyard? And, when you look at politics, I had lunch recently with the head of the DCCC, who's running all the House races. We didn't talk about polling the entire lunch because every election's close. I mean, every one of these races is close, right? And, is it 39, 37? I mean, polling can't get any more precise than that. This presidential election's close. Your House races are going to be close. I didn't realize this, but Arizona, I interviewed Andre Cherney today. I mean, his district is like 37% Republican, 32% independent, 29% Democrat, right? Like and we're still going to win there. And I think that, so, I think the key about polling is that it's just one piece of data and a much broader set of understandings. And as you know, in Arizona, Kari Lake, the awfulness of Kari Lake cannot be easily conveyed through data, right? You have to live there. You have to understand her titanic Olympian level of awfulness and extremism, and how it's an X factor in the politics there, as it is with Trump, as it is with, I think, Mark Robinson in North Carolina, as it is with this crazy Senate candidate in Wisconsin, right? There is this fatigue in the electorate of their craziness, and I think that that's not easily captured in data, but you all know it because you live it every day, right? That there is this sense in the electorate that something's gone wrong with them and that we need a better path. And I still think it's the driving force of our politics. And if we can present a positive, optimistic response to that, to tell people that we've made things better, that in a recent Wall Street Journal poll about, where they polled in the battleground states, clear majorities in Arizona said things have gotten much better in Arizona in the last 2 years. Well, that's really good news for us, because we should be able to say they've gotten better because of us and Joe Biden, right? And so there's not as much doom and gloom with voters about the economy when you ask them about their own personal situation, how things are going in their states. If people were down on the economy and down on inflation, we wouldn't have been winning these elections all across the country the last 2 years, right? So, be optimistic and just, chin up and go fight really hard. Hopium, the way I describe Hopium is that Hopium is hope with a plan. We just don't hope elections are going to go well. We do the work to make it so, right? And that's, part of why you're all here tonight.
We have one more question from our volunteer and leader, Vivian Hart, who wants to know, what are the most effective things to say to undecided voters? If you can imagine there is someone like that,
Yeah, no, there are. There are
what
lots, and
persuasive
there.
arguments?
Yeah, I mean, there. Listen, if you subscribe to Hopium, which is free, I make these arguments every day. I give you lots of data to make these arguments. But I think the election on some levels is coming down to this kind of the presidential election, and you have your own issues and with your Senate race and your House races. But you know, the Democratic Party is fighting every day for you, and we've made things better. And we have a track record of making things better. Bill Clinton made things better, and Barack Obama made things better, and Joe Biden's made things better. The last three Republican presidents have led to recession, higher deficits, and American decline. And Trump represents something, that could alter the course of our country's history. I mean, he really is the first person to run for president who doesn't really fundamentally believe in democracy and is potentially going to end American democracy for all time. And so I think the simple message is Joe Biden's been a good president. The country's better off. He's a man of deep integrity and who's fighting for us every day. And the orange guy, the other guy, right, the ugly guy, the extremist, is going to lead the country to ruin. That his own ego and his obsession with himself and his need to stay in power he puts that in front of all of us. And that in a time when, we make things better and they lead to chaos and decline, some version of that, I think, is going to be, the story and narrative that we all tell. I think on some levels, you can overthink things in life, right? You can overthink politics. It may be really easy, this election, which is that, we're a good party that fights really hard to make things better. And they've lost their way and they don't deserve power here or in Arizona or in Washington. And it may be that's what it comes down to, is this very elemental understanding that we're good people that work really hard to try to make things better and been successful at it. And they're a party that's lost its way and can't be trusted with power again. I think whatever version of that you tell, and I will say one last thing, Larry, because I get asked about this a lot. I think the most effective thing you can do when you talk to people, because I had one of my favorite stories at Hopium was that in our chat, a woman named Irene a few months ago said, Simon, I went out to dinner with three of my girlfriends and they were all dumping on Joe Biden. And I used the stuff that I get at Hopium. And by the end of the dinner, they'd all come around and, they were on board and, good, we can do it. Like we can go out and make the case. I think that where you're most effective as an advocate is not by reading talking points that you don't necessarily really understand or that you want to sound like, Joe Biden, is find a single issue that really matters to you. And that is the reason that you're doing this, and master it, understand it, study it, and then convey when you're with friends and say, listen, the reason I'm supporting Joe Biden, there's a lot of reasons too, but here's why I'm doing it. And that passion and that intensity is the thing that persuades people, right? That's the thing that pushes people, is that when you connect with them and say, whether it's reproductive freedom or it's loss of democracy or it's economic growth or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, climate change or gun safety. I mean, you have lots of issues. Pick one thing and just go there and live there and say, look, we all talk about a lot of issues in our life, but here's why I'm where I am and why I'm fighting for Joe Biden. This is what motivates me. And become expert in one narrow place that matters to you. And I trust you that that's enough. You don't have to talk about the deficit in 2012 to be able to convince voters, right? Who knows? This stuff is, most people don't live in a place of enormous complexity. They want to know that you're passionate, you're connected, that you love your country, that you're fighting and why you're fighting, and that you're fighting for something that's bigger than just partisanship, that's bigger than red team, blue team, that Democrat, Republican, right? You had John McCain, who was not a red team, blue team guy, right, in Arizona. And, I think you have to be persuasive. You have to go to that place where you're a passionate, proud American who loves your country, who's motivated by love of country and patriotism. Maybe that's the answer, Larry. What's the most persuasive thing we can all do is we have to be unrelenting, passionate patriots, right? And then we have to be motivated by love of country. If we do that, I think we're going to kick their ass. because Donald Trump is not motivated by that. We know that. He's motivated by what's motivating him. He wants to stay out of jail. That's what's motivating him. It's a tragedy for this amazing country. And we have no choice other than to kick their ass, right? So thank you all. Bring it home. Listen, because I'm here now, there's something you have to do, which is we have to win both chambers in the state legislature, right? Not, we got to get this done. This is our deal. I came here tonight. Now you got to go win both chambers. It's not good enough just to win with Rubin and Joe Biden. But we got to flip both chambers. So email me the morning after, Larry, and let me know we met our obligations. We got this done. But I just want to end by saying, listen, again, you're part of one of the most successful Democratic parties in the country. You guys have done remarkable things in recent years. But this victory, this matters more than anything else. And we got to go do it together. Let me know what I can do to help you. Thanks, everybody.